Welcome back to the Compliance Kitchen. In today's episode, I want to briefly take a look at a recent OFAC announcement of a settlement with Airbnb Payments Inc., which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Airbnb Inc. According to the announcement and also a related web notice, which I have links on compliancekitchen.com for you guys if you want to take a look at it in more detail. Airbnb Payments Inc., and I will just call it company, agreed to remit a little bit over $91,000 to settle its potential civil liability for apparent violations of the U.S.-Cuba sanctions. This had to do with processing payments that were related to guests who were traveling to Cuba for reasons outside of OFAC's authorized categories. And apparently the company also failed to keep certain required records in regards to Cuba transactions. So as OFAC tells us in the announcement, the company, again, that's Airbnb Payments Inc., conducted a forensic review of a sampling of stays and experiences. So these are transactions that were involving Cuba. The company discovered that they did process payments related to several thousand of travel transactions in Cuba, and also processed payments related to transactions involving non-U.S. persons engaging in Cuba travel on Airbnb Inc.'s platform prior to OFAC issuing a license to Airbnb Inc. To engage in Cuba business. So these apparent violations primarily occurred, according to OFAC, because Airbnb Inc., they launched its Cuba business back in 2015. This business would eventually extend to a global customer base, but the company didn't fully address the complexities of operating a Cuba-related sanctions compliance program for internet-based travel services. So after they discovered these transactions, the company voluntarily reported them to OFAC. The statutory maximum civil penalty for this type of matter is something over $600,000. However, because the company self-disclosed and the OFAC deemed them a non-egregious case, and they also cooperated with the government, the settlement ended up being much less. Like I said, it was just north of $91,000. Looking at what OFAC considered to be an aggravating factor, so the violations took place following a change in foreign policy with respect to Cuba in 2015, and also associated modifications to the Cuba sanctions that maintained certain restrictions. The company is a large and sophisticated US-based tech company, so that would also be an aggravating factor. Mitigating factors, the company has not received a penalty notice or finding of violation from OFAC in the last in 5 years preceding the transactions that gave rise to the apparent violations that we're talking about today. The company's cooperated with OFAC's investigation, and it represented that it undertook significant remedial measures to address sanctions compliance deficiencies, including an IP blocking regime, collection of country of residence and payment instrument information, screening of hosts in Cuba to ensure that that no hosts are Cuban government officials or Communist Party members, also conducting manual checks to ensure that no listings are associated with the Cuba restricted list. Also, guests that book a stay or experience have to complete an attestation prior to completing a reservation, and there's also a requirement now that users listing a property in Cuba as a host on Airbnb Inc.'s platform have to certify that the user is an independent entrepreneur. So kind of on just the framework, again, I always touch base or touch on the OFAC framework for compliance commitments. This is a publication back from May of 2019. It is worth taking a look at. It's providing a lot of information to foreign entities that conduct business in or with the U.S., as well as U.S. companies, as to what is OFAC's perspective on the essential components of a sanctions compliance program. The framework also has an appendix that offers a brief analysis of some of the root causes of apparent violations of the U.S. sanctions programs that OFAC has identified during its investigations. So I always suggest that that is a good resource to read through if you are dealing with U.S. sanctions.